Let's take a look now at what's ahead for the markets next week. Apple is kicking off its Worldwide Developers Conference on Monday. On Wednesday, we get more inflation in the form of CPI data. We also get more earnings from Oracle. Thursday, we get the PPI data and another round of jobless claims like every Thursday for your entire life, plus an ECB rate decision. Finally, on Friday, University of Michigan consumer sentiment comes out. And the big one, SpaceX, is expected to start trading on Friday as well. Now, after months of debate, the Senate has approved nearly $70 billion in funding for ICE and Customs and Border Protection. Beyond the money itself, the bill could fundamentally change how those agencies are funded. Here to explain is Nathan Dean, senior government analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence and the author of the Washington Update newsletter. And Nathan, I was listening to you yesterday through the Votorama. What an exciting day it was on the floor. We didn't get any kind of amendment to permanently block the weaponization fund, but we got close to that. How was it?
Yeah, so we got very close to it. I mean, it would only failed by a couple of votes here, and this was really to try and codify language in the Senate bill that would allow President Trump or not allow President Trump to move forward with weaponization, this $1.8 billion fund that people have been talking about. So, it's always questions of whether that comes back. But what this bill ultimately did, as you noted, is it gave $70 billion to the Department of Homeland Security. And this actually takes out the policy arguments that the Democrats can use until after the end of the Trump administration. So you're not going to really see any leverage for ICE tactics or types of funding squabbles, if you will, until after President Trump is out of office. From the market perspective, not that big of a deal, but there are two things to keep in mind. Private prison stocks like Geo Group and Core Civic are moving off of this. The idea here is now that the funding has been secured for the next 3 years, potentially the Department of Homeland Security will go out and purchase assets from those two companies. So Geo Group was up 8% yesterday as a result of it.
Yeah, I did think they were going to need that amendment to push this through. I also thought they would need to take out the ballroom funding. That happened, didn't it?
Yes, it did. The ballroom funding isn't there. And this is really a big, interesting question for those of us in Washington, because, look, the ballroom is going to get built no matter what. I mean, and this funding in particular was actually designed for the Secret Service and for the security apparatus of what's going underneath the ballroom. But you're not going to see the ballroom actually construction stop as a result of this. So probably what will happen here is that the Trump administration will try and reallocate funds from other parts of the U.S. government. Maybe it's the Department of Defense, et cetera. And then that money will actually go into the ballroom. But ultimately here, it's a very difficult vote for Republicans, especially in advance of the election, to try and say, look, we are going to support $1 billion for this ballroom when President Trump's been saying all along private companies are going to be the ones paying for it.
This is, I think, interesting. And to your point, not that it matters too much for markets, but President Trump has said essentially that he will pay for it or that private donors will pay for it. Isn't it the case that certain things cannot legally be paid for with funds outside of the government, like these secret service facilities?
Yeah, I mean, and this is where the Trump administration has somewhat gotten into trouble, but also not gotten into trouble here because, look, you're not supposed to be able to reallocate money outside of the appropriations process. I mean, if Congress says, here's what the money is for, then you need to actually, and you change it, then you could potentially run into trouble here. But then that's what is the resolve, or how does Congress actually come back here? The answer is a lawsuit. And then it goes to the courts, and it takes multiple years to actually go to the Supreme Court. In many cases, the courts just say, look, this isn't all that big of a deal. Or for political reasons, the Democrats say, look, we're just not going to really push the president on this. So President Trump is testing the boundaries of the executive branch. And this is something you're going to see continue through the rest of the midterms and beyond, because ultimately here, when it's the executive branch versus the legislative branch, it's the judicial branch that comes in and tries to figure that out. And that process is not quick. It takes a long time, and President Trump loves to take advantage of that.
All right, Nathan, great talking to you. Really appreciate you joining us. Nathan Dean there of Bloomberg Intelligence. I look forward to listening to you still with Joe and Kayleigh. They're much better at doing these interviews. On Balance of Power, that kicks off on Bloomberg Television at 1 o'clock, and then the late edition at 5. Let's get a check.